I want to talk about sales today. Would you
Yeah.
consider yourself as a sales coach?
So if I've got two contractors that are coming in and one guy's at 15,000, another guy's at 18,000, there's a $3,000 price gap. And as a consumer, I'm going to ask, what are the differences between the two contractors?
Roofers are scammers. I paid for my roof 8 years ago, $7,000, and today it's 20.
Year after year after year, when you ask those consumers what brand of shingles is on your roof, more than 50% of them have no idea.
We're going to get back to John DeRosa in just 1 minute, but first let me introduce you to our sponsor of this episode, ICO Shingles. ICO Shingles is arguably one of the best products on the market today, especially if we're talking about ICO Dynasty. If your roofer is telling you that all shingles are the same, you have to fire that roofer. I promise you, shingles are not made the same. The company who makes shingles makes the difference. ICO is one of those companies that you can trust. They're a family-owned business, they're a private company, and they do care about quality of their shingles. They weren't always the best, but today ICO Dynasty is one of the best shingles on the market. If you watch our shingle guys, shingle test comparison head-to-head, how they compare to other brands, they will be heavier, one of the most consistent products on the market with the best nailing zone. You cannot lift that shingle once it's nailed to the roof. I highly recommend ICO Dynasty. If you have not tried it, order it for one of your jobs, see the difference, you will not be sorry. Now, let's get back to John DeRosa. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Business Hats Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, John DeRosa from SRS Distribution. And man, I love your last name. You have one of those stage names, like,
Oh, yeah?
like famous last name. Like you could be an actor, you could be, you're famous in our circles. And welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I've often been told I have a face for radio, so anything other than that is probably a good thing, right?
Absolutely. John, I want to talk about sales today. Would you consider yourself as a sales coach, or what's your official title if I'm on a plane next to you and we're going somewhere and, I'm breaking the ice and asking you, what do you do for a living? What do you answer?
I just help, I work with home improvement and remodeling contractors and help them, drive, higher sales results. So I think that is, it's multifaceted. It could be as simple as just providing some coaching. It could also be, let's build a process and a system to help support, whatever the goals are of the organization. Even something as laid out as helping them build a company story presentation, whatever it is, if it has to do with sales and helping contractors win, and that's something I'm pretty passionate about.
Love it. Let's dive into that. How do you invite yourself as a contractor to the kitchen table? There's so many contractors out there who likes to provide an estimate, email estimate, leave estimate at the door. They don't know or they don't like to be inside the house. The famous phrase is kitchen table sale. How do you invite yourself? What's the best strategy for someone who've never done it before?
Yeah, I think the first thing that the contractor needs to do is they need to get out of his own head. I've often said, and I don't want to maybe be too forceful on the topic, but there was a point where I was telling people, if you can't get to the kitchen table, then you should probably consider whether or not that's a lead that you want to pursue. But I've sort of softened that a little bit because I know there's a lot of guys out there that are successful in going out and maybe leaving an estimate at the door. My challenge with that, Dmitry, is if the customer doesn't have an opportunity to get to know who you are and what you do and understand your passion and your energy and all the things that makes you different and better, they have nothing to base their decision on other than the price that's written down on a piece of paper. And the reality is when we all do this, we all buy based on differences and the perceived value of those differences. So if I'm out there and I'm looking at two televisions, for example, and that's a weird, correlation, it might not necessarily relate to roofing, but if I'm looking at two TVs and one's $1,000 more than the other one, I'm asking myself, well, what's the difference between the higher priced TV and what's the value of those differences? Isn't it worth $1,000? So if I've got two contractors that are coming in and one guy's at 15,000, another guy's at 18,000, there's a $3,000 price gap. And as a consumer, I'm going to ask, what are the differences between the two contractors? And is it worth $3,000 more to obtain those differences? And if I'm not at the kitchen table, then I really don't have an opportunity to sell the value of those differences. And they have nothing to base their decision on other than the price, because that's the only real difference that they see. So, to kind of answer your question, I just think the contractor needs to understand that if they really want to sell their value and they really want to, make the money that they deserve to make on that particular project, the best way to do that is to get to the kitchen table. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think guys are comfortable with the idea of going out and talking to customers. I think where they get sort of hung up on is, I don't want to be perceived to be a salesperson. And therefore what they're doing is they show up, they develop a relationship, they show them I'm a really nice guy or gal, and then they just hope that the customer jumps in the shopping cart. But there are some sales skills and some disciplines that we try to teach to get people comfortable with the fact that, are they emotionally connected to us? Have we created a condition where they want to do business with us? And then it's just a simple function of, I'm now going to ask them, to take those next steps. So
I remember myself when I used to present estimate or email estimate, and then when I switched to in-house estimates, the hardest part for me was the invitation part, because when you're not used to it, you don't know what to say. So you measure the roof, you have the price, but now you don't want to give them a price. You want to tell them about yourself. And I did not want to come off as a salesy person, right? Like I wanted to win the job, but I did not know how to do it. So I simply did not know how to say, like, hey, can I come inside and show you about my company? What's the best strategy to start building? Because homeowners will say, just give me the price. And I think it's wrong. I think before you give them a price, you should give them presentation about who you are, what products you offer. It can't be just piece of paper. I'm going to install, JF Timberline for this price. You should tell them about JF if that's the brand you install. You should tell them about your company, how many years you've been in business and accreditations. But people feel pressure from the homeowner about the price. It's all they hear. So how does someone invite themselves? How do you build to the price?
Yeah, Dmitry, that's a great question. And that's a real big problem, I think, that exists. And if you look at the training that I do, it's really based on the contractor following a process that enables them to secure three very important commitments. The first commitment is a commitment to the need. Do I recognize I have a problem, and am I committed to solving that problem? Am I committed to the company? Do I believe that your company is the right choice for the project? Am I confident that you're going to provide a great experience and high quality? And then a third commitment is a commitment to the product and the system and getting them involved in making product choices. But you asked a question about the pricing and the homeowner that sort of kind of takes that first step and says, hey, look, let's just cut to the chase. I don't want some big dog and pony show. Just give me the number. I recommend that contractors, upon meeting that homeowner, that the first thing they do is they set an agenda and they let the homeowner know exactly when you're going to deliver the price. Because the truth of the matter is, the only reason you're there is to give them the number. That's all they care about. So when you show up, and it's kind of funny, right? Because my process is 7 steps. If you blow up the roadmap, it's almost twice that amount. But the price is towards the end, right? So we got a homeowner that says, look, the only thing I want to know is what's this roof going to cost? And you're going in and you're trying to build rapport, and you're doing a homeowner interviewing, you're telling your company story, and you're doing your product presentation. In their mind, they're going, when's he going to give me the price? So you have a distracted buyer. So what I often recommend is, before you do any rapport building, set an agenda. I want to start that presentation off on a professional footing. And I want to say, Mrs. Smith, now, if my lead was set for me by my company, I might say, Mrs. Smith, when you spoke to my company, did they tell you what you could expect from me today? And the homeowner is going to say, well, yeah. And you say, what was that? And they're going to say, well, they told me you were going to give me a price. And I'm going to say, you're right, I am going to do that, but I'm actually going to take it one step further. See, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an inspection to determine exactly what it is that you need. And then I'm going to want to sit down with you and talk to you about what it is that you want. And believe it or not, sometimes those two things can be a little bit different. And assuming I can give you what you want and what you need, we're then going to look at some pictures and we're going to design a roof that speaks directly to your wants and needs on the project. And based on all that, I'm going to be able to give you a price in writing that's guaranteed. The whole process should take no more than an hour, hour and 15 minutes, how we set for time. And I'm kind of setting that agenda and letting them know there's certain things that need to happen for me to give you that number. And I think that buys me a little bit of patience. And I would encourage guys to, it's hard thing to teach, right? Is to listen to your gut. But your gut kind of tells you that you're doing too much rapport building. And now I need to kind of shift into the presentation. You got to kind of listen to yourself there. But I'm a big fan of just setting that agenda up front and kind of taking control of the conversation.
I would argue that many don't have self-awareness about them talking too much, about them. They don't see themselves from the side. And it's becoming a problem in the industry because there's a lot of trainings, not only in our industry, but we're talking about, guys who sell in pest control, guys who sell, alarms, go to car dealerships. So we have so many sales coaches now. And the problem that I see that people get trained on the sales techniques and, rapport building and, presentation stuff. And then salespeople become like robots. They stop listening or they talk too much. I've experienced it so many times, and I personally hate it. For me, the conversation is over if you're not listening to me. So I like what you said about listen to your gut, go with your feeling, because every customer is different. You have to have a structure, but you also have to, you have 2 years and 1 month. Just be a listener. I remember I was buying Toyota Sienna a year ago, and I was looking for Platinum Edition, and I went through so many websites. They just did not have one. It was brand new, and I wanted recline seats on the back. I found one listed, so I would walk into the dealership, and I asked to talk to sales rep. I know exactly the car I want. I know it's a rare car. I'm ready to buy, and I'm like, I want a Toyota Sienna Limited. Do you have it? And this freaking guy asking me a question like, if I find you a car, are you ready to buy it? Like, yeah, I'm here to buy a car. Do you have it? And instead of just answering the question, yes, I have it, we have it, let's take a look, he keeps asking me his ice breaking, wherever it was, questions, keep qualifying me. I'm like, I'm as qualified as they come. When I buy a car, I've bought like over 100 cars in 15 years. If I'm coming to you and I say, I know what I want, if I call a roofer, it's like, I want a OC flex. I want ice and water on the entire roof. Give me a price. Stop asking me questions. If we're gonna do this today, are you gonna? You know what I mean? Like, if a customer's telling you something, because some customers are ready to buy. I remember I have a sales rep who was very, very seasoned in the industry, and it was, I want to say 2014. It was my first year. So first year in business, it was just me. Second year, I hired a seasoned sales rep. But I'm a business owner, and I'm also no bullshit guy. I sell super fast. To this day, my sales process like 15, 20 minutes. I tell you what I have. I'll build a little rapport. I'll give you reasons, and that's it. I shut up, and I tell you if you want to do business with me. And that was the same in the roofing business. And the way I did it, it was, I remember I had an appointment at 8 o'clock. Drove down we have Bloomington here. It's about 40 minutes from our office. So I'm there at 8 o'clock. I jump on the roof, walkable, 412 pitch, no details, like easier of 20 squares.
Yeah.
So I didn't even have to measure it. Like, I knew it was like 24 squares to work up. So I think it was like $9,000 job at the time. So I measured it, came to the house, I said, like, this is what you have. I did have like 10, 15 slides. I went through it like in 10 minutes. I gave them a price. I told him the products we sell, how long I've been doing this. And I asked him, $9,000, would you like to do business? Would you like to sign contract? He's like, sure. So the guy signs contract, gives me down payment, and I'm driving back. I'm back in my office by 9 o'clock. So my appointment was at 8, and I'm back at 9. My sales rep asking me, didn't you have appointment this morning? I'm like, yes, I did. How did it go? Like, I sold it. It's like, what do you mean you sold it? Yeah, right there, contract and check and everything. He's like, it's impossible. It's like 9:10, and you're already back. And the what I'm trying to say is, We have so many processes, we have so many systems that people stop listening. I cannot tell you how many times someone knock at my door and I'm like, here comes another one. And I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to have
Sure.
conversation, but they have line after line after line, and you can see it in their eyes. They don't feel it. They say it, but there's no heart in it.
There
They,
has to be some conviction there. Yeah.
exactly. There's no
Hmm.
conversation. There is like, oh, we're already working with someone. Oh, really? It's just, especially pest control guys. And, my wife would hire someone, and then you have another pest control guy, and you're trying to have a conversation with them, but they're just, you can tell they're trying to overcome your objections, but they're not having conversation with you. And this is what I call like, there's no heart in that approach. And when there's no heart, I mean, would you agree with this? The only reason people not gonna hire you is because they don't trust you.
I
That's
think the
the
trust is a huge factor. I mean, I do think there's moments where people maybe don't have the money and they can't afford you as much as
Sure.
they might want to do
But if they're
business with you. They
if
just don't
money
have the.
if money
Yeah.
is not a problem,
Yeah.
would you say it's all come down to the price, to
Yeah. I
the
think it's,
trust?
I think it's a trust factor. But I also think too, Dmitry, like, you talk about your sales situation. I want business owners to recognize that they have a certain degree of credibility and
Hmm.
authority when they make a sales call. Like your rep, obviously was surprised that you closed the deal in 15 minutes. But as an owner, it's probably easier for you to do
Sure.
that than it is for any rep to do that, because you're the owner. You got a lot of stuff on your plate. You can go in and you're authentic and you're real, and you're like, you want to do this, let's do this. And I think that there's some value in your title. I
I
don't think the
agree.
sales rep has that ability. And I will tell you that part of the reasons why I think reps don't listen very well is because they're not scripted very well. And I know that some people push back on the idea of a script, but I don't script people because I want to take away their personality or their style or have them be not authentic. I give them a script because I want them to memorize and internalize the talking points and the things that are really important so that they can listen. And now when I listen, I can then shape that script around the prospect to make sure it speaks to them. And the only other thing I was going to add too is that we talk about awareness. There is other trainings out there, and I do one called Behavior Dynamics, very like sales 401 stuff, where you could walk in and you can assess the buyer based on how assertive they are and how responsive they are, and then measure that against your own personal style and figure out, how do I flex my approach to be more influential with that prospect? And it's not like I'm trying to be manipulative. I'm just trying to not rub them the wrong way. You're a driver. I mean, you're a very results oriented, let's get down to facts. If I'm a opposite quadrant of you in the 4-quadrant spectrum, and I'm trying to sell you on feelings, and let's develop a relationship, and let's talk about processes, you're going to lose your mind, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to be nice here. So I think that we need to be sensitive to the fact that people are different than us, and we can have to sell them in a way that they want to be sold. It's like the golden rule of selling: sell unto others as they would have you sell unto them.
Can you recommend a book or a resource about personality psychology? I mean, it's crazy that we're talking about it, because if your audience is roofers and contractors, now we're recommending them books on psychology. But I think it's extremely important to truly understand. And the best thing ever happened to me is psychology lessons, psychology in college and university. And to this day, it's number one books that I read. It's all about,
Mhm.
understanding body language, understanding the words, understanding mimics. Because if you understand the body language, if you understand psychology of behavior in anything, I mean, sales, personal relationships, business management, when you deal with your own employee, I mean, you have advantage in every area of your life. But how many
Yeah.
contractors conscious about it and invest in it? Can you recommend some books, some resources? 56% of Americans cannot write $1,000 check. Very sad statistics, but it's a big problem in construction industry, especially in storm restoration industry, when insurance companies are willing to pay for the roofs, but homeowners have deductibles that oftentimes are two, three, $4,000 or even more percentage of their house. Sometimes it's 2, 3%, and people cannot finance even that. That's why I recommend Enhancify. If you're the contractor, you need to have solid financing option for those customers, because people need roofs above their head, and something like financing deductible should not be a problem if they cannot afford it. Enhancify allows you to offer financing even if you've been in business only a couple of weeks, unlike other players who require you to be in business for a couple of years. It's one of the simplest solutions, the easiest to set up. I highly recommend Enhancify. Go check it out. I'm going to put a link in the description. Tell them Dmitry sent you. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there's a book. I mean, it's an old book written by a guy named Ron Willingham called Integrity Selling. And I mean, there are things that he taught 50, 60 years ago that are still relevant today. But in there, he talks about different types of behavior styles, I think doers and plotters, and I can't remember the words. There's another book out there, and I think it's had several revisions, called People Styles at Work. I mean, if you look at both of those books, it does talk about, how to determine the style of somebody else. Also on my, Facebook group, I've got a course in there. I've tried to add something where they can go in and download the forms and figure out what their style is and learn about the different styles. But, we've all seen like the DISC and the Briggs Meyer and all that stuff. And many people don't have the luxury of going in and saying to their prospect, would you please color or fill this out using a number 2 pencil so I can scan it and then determine what your style is. So we just got to go in and say, hey, look, is this person more assertive, or are they less assertive than most people that I know? Are they more emotionally responsive or less emotionally responsive? And then even if I get it half right, if I get one of those dynamics right, I still have a greater opportunity to not piss them off in the process.
Love
and
it.
I'll tell you one other thing you mentioned too, when you talk about awareness and body language and things like that. This is one of the reasons why women crush it in our industry. I mean, women sales rep in our industry are so good because they test so high on the emotional, what's the word? Emotional awareness coefficients. I mean, where they, it's like my wife. I tell people in seminars, like, my wife will say to me, what's wrong with you? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, you're in a bad mood. I go, no, I'm not. She goes, well, your eyebrow. I go, my eyebrow. And she just picks up on my body language to tell that there's something bothering you. I mean, women, the part of the brain that recognizes and responsible for like language comprehension and understanding is larger in women than it is in men. So they pick up on that stuff a lot better. And I think that's why, they can have that much more collaborative and really develop that relationship in a way that makes them succeed in our business. So just giving a plug for the ladies out there who are rocking it in the roofing industry.
Well, on top of that, they have way bigger intuition, and the guard that homeowners have to male salespeople is not there. You don't expect women to do any harm to your property, especially if we're talking about door knockers. Women come innocent. You don't expect pressure from them. I mean, not if you not if you're looking for it. I mean, smart guys should be on the lookout, because we're suckers. We'll definitely make buying decisions based on appearances, but overall, it's easier for them to get people open up early on, and then from there it's intuition, reading, being listeners, and 100% agree, they're killing it.
And they also too, Dmitry, I mean, they have if you look at research, right, it will show that that women talk more in sales calls than men do, believe it or not. That's what the data suggests. But they're better listeners because of the reasons, their intent. Women tend to listen with the intent to understand, whereas guys, we want to listen to respond, right? I hear what you're saying, and I want to tell you, like, I want to talk to you, and I want to one up you. They listen because they want to understand, and then they respond based on their understanding. And I think it's a lot better, easier to develop a powerful relationship and an emotional connection with the prospect when they feel like you're connected to them. And there's a book out by a woman named Amy Cuddy called Why She Buys. I mean, it's a monster. But in that book, she talks about the fact that the home is the center of a woman's universe, and it's a reflection of her personality. So when you're going in and you're selling a roof, you've got to understand that you're literally proposing that you're going to tear the roof off of her universe. And that freaks her out. So I often suggest in the sales process, like when you're talking to if you see little kids or if there's a dog in the house, I mean, you need to connect with her on a level that says, hey, what are we going to do with this guy when we're back? How's this little dog going to be affected by the hammering? You think it's going to freak him out? Where does the dog go to the bathroom? What time do the kids catch the school bus in the morning? We're going to make sure that we've got a safe path, because when guys look at a project, buy a project, we approached a project thinking about like, what's it going to cost and how am I going to be inconvenienced, right? She's looking at the project in terms of how it affects everybody who lives in the home and maybe even how the neighbors are going to react to it. So we're saying, well, what do you mean I can't park in my driveway? And she's like, driveway? The kid's got to catch the school bus. The dog's got to go to the bathroom. I may need to get out and, do something with my mom or whatever it is. And, they're looking at it more about the totality of the project. So I'd be very sensitive to that and dialed in on that.
And by the way, guys, women are the ones who's making like 80% of decisions. You think even if you're selling to a man, it's probably his wife, because it's not just about colors. It's decisions. I mean, they give us the authority to make the decision, but they rule the house. 100% agree. By the way, if you are listening to it on a podcast, I am going to add every single link to every single book that John mentioned so far and the rest of the podcast in description on YouTube. So if you're curious about the books that we're mentioning and recommending, you can go to YouTube, find this video, this podcast, go to description or tap comment, and you will see every single link to the book, because I know when I listen to podcasts, it's so hard to implement. Like sometimes we're driving and we don't have a pen of paper in front of us, but you go back, you click on it and get that Audible or order that book, and we'll make it easier for you. John, my next question is, let's talk about product. How important is the product, and is product important at all? If you would put percentage next to product, is it a 25% of success? Is it 10%? Is it 80%? Does it matter at all what we sell, what brand we sell? I'm talking about, GF versus OC or CertainTeed, because you have successful contractors all over the country who sells different brands. And some companies, today, some sales guys sell $3-4 million of ICO for this company, then the Swish company, and they sell $4 million of CertainTeed for this company. Nothing changed. Product changed, but nothing else changed. How important is the product? Is it overrated? Does it matter at all?
Oh boy. So let me give you kind of the long answer. If you go to the NAHB every year, they do a survey where they interview consumers. They survey consumers who had their roof replaced, and they ask them, which brand of shingles is on their roof. It is not uncommon. Now, we're talking about if you look specifically at the consumers who wrote a check. These aren't property managers. This wasn't an insurance claim. It's like, I funded my roofing project. Year after year after year, when you ask those consumers what brand of shingles is on your roof, more than 50% of them have no idea. I would argue
that's after they paid and after.
Oh my gosh, Dmitry, could you imagine dropping $18,000 on a roof and not knowing what kind of shingles it is?
Oh, I believe that. I believe that statistic. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So, but here's the other thing. We go into an auto mechanic and we put new struts in our truck, or we put a new carburetor in our car. We're not asking the mechanic, what brand of product are you using and why are you using that? And the reason is because we're trusting the mechanic. And I would also argue, too, of the 40% that do know what brand of shingles or do name a brand, I would argue that many of them name the wrong brand.
Wow.
Because I think that they go into Home Depot or they go into Lowe's and they see a brand or they see the advertising, products like GAF and Owens Corning and CertainTeed and all the ones that we mentioned, ICO, Atlas. I mean, they do a really good job of creating. Just assume that that's what I have. So I'm going to say, well, I got a really great, GAF Oak Ridge shingle on my roof. They don't really know. So what I often tell contractors is that product presentation is a really important part of the sales process, because I need to get the product commitment. But one of the things that I don't want them to do is please stop listening to and this is a tough thing for me to say as a distributor, but the shingle manufacturers want you to sell their stuff, and everything that they're providing you are tools and techniques and strategies that are designed to sell their brand. I would way rather the contractors sell themselves and talk about how they're going to build a system that's using the number one brand. So if I'm an ICO contractor, for example, I mean, at the end of the day, am I selling them an ICO roof system, or am I selling them a John DeRosa roof system that's using ICO products? And there is a difference there. And what's interesting, Dmitry, is a lot of guys will nod their head and they go, that's what I do. And I go, well, how do you do it? Because at the end of the day, what really matters is the perception of the consumer. Does the consumer think that you're selling an ICO roof, or do they think it's your roof system that's using those products? And the thing that I don't want, and the reason why I'm not a big fan of you going out and taking, like Owens Corning has a great presentation that they built that goes out and it positions Owens Corning first. And I think that's one of the things that Rodney Webb teaches them, right? Is to, make it about start with the big guy and then work down towards you. And I do think it's a great presentation. But the concern that I have with that is if I, over the course of that discussion, establish a buying criteria in the mind of the consumer that says, look, what's really important is Owens Corning installed by a platinum preferred contractor. Well, how many contractors in the marketplace can meet that criteria? Or just say, I'm certified by this guy and I'll put Owens Corning on your roof. So I don't want that to be the buying criteria. I want to create a condition where I'm introducing them to my roof system and I'm educating them along the way and allowing them to make choices. One of the biggest concerns that I have, I shouldn't say biggest concerns, but it's a concern, is that some contractors are so married to their system. I'm a master elite contractor. I want to sell a roof that qualifies for Golden Pledge. And that's what I sell them. I go in and I quote them a Golden Pledge roof and I say, what color do you want? I think that it is way more valuable to the consumer. I also think it increases the perceived value of the project. I also think it gets an emotional connection to the contractor and the project if I'm giving the customer options and letting them choose the components that are going to win that system. So rather than me saying, I'm going to give you this, and this, and that's going to enable me to give you this warranty, I'm educating them on, would you rather have 15-pound felt or a synthetic felt? Let's talk about the differences. The homeowner's making, and I'm limiting these, Dmitry. I'm not going to waterboard them with 50 options because it becomes overwhelming and that actually is a demotivator. But if I can choose 4 or 5 different system components that I'm going to provide to them as I walk through the roofing process. I'm going to show them how we're going to do their roof. And all along the way, I'm going to say, hey, look, I got some options for ice and water protector here. Which one would you prefer that I, install on your roof? They're making choices. And then in the end, it comes down to, okay, I've got a couple different shingles that I can offer you. And then by doing that, I can say, hey, look, because of the product choices that you've made and the manufacturer's confidence in me as your contractor, I'm able to provide something here that not many can. I want to talk to you about this extra warranty that's available. However I sell that. But it can't be about, and the other thing I'll tell you too is I want people to try to be a little bit creative in the way that they sell those components. Like, don't go out and say, hey, I'm going to give you a high wind application. I refer to it as a perimeter fastening system, right? If I'm in a room full of 150 contractors and I'm doing a role play and I say, hey guys, role play with me. And I say to the contractor, Mr. Contractor, hey, I really want to thank you for coming out to my home. I appreciate what you're doing. I really trust you guys. You guys seem like you do a really good job. But I met with somebody yesterday and he told me that I should go with the advanced weather protection package. Is that something that you offer? Most guys in the room go, I don't even know what that is. Well, how cool is that? If I can create a condition as a contractor where I'm selling something that is proprietary to me, and all I'm doing is I'm rebranding something unto myself that makes it difficult for the other people to answer. So that's part of the way that you sell the system. And again, I'm using GAF. They recognize that as one of the best shingle products available in North America or the world or whatever it is. I don't need to get into a huge presentation about here's why I use GAF. Company was founded here. This is the products that were built on the space shuttle and all that kind of stuff. Because the customer just wants to know what's important to me. How are you going to build the roof system and what's it going to cost?
Guys, numbers don't lie. I love where John started. He started with the data. He started with the consumer data after the purchase. It's so powerful. I would argue this, and this is truth bomb that not many of our listeners are ready to hear. People will remember the price they paid way more often than the brand of product they installed. I cannot tell you how many times I have asked someone about who did your job and they didn't remember. Who did your roof? Who did your siding? They did not remember. But you know what they remembered? I got premium. I went with the highest bidder, or I paid too much. Because when they pay not the cheapest, but the highest price, that's what they're going to remember. They're going to remember the buying decision that someone impressed them with a brand. With whatever you do, they hear it a little bit different. You are sold on the brand. You are sold on the process. Now you're convincing them. I mean, listen, when I come and get, like, let's say oil change, and someone comes to me and say, Dmitry, you should go with a synthetic of, Shell versus this. I don't know. I did not do my research, but the guy in front of me, he's like, well, if he's telling me that this oil change with this brand, it's $90 versus 80, it's way better. I pay extra $10, but he gave me the reason. I trust that. Guess what? I'm not gonna remember what brand he recommends, but I trust him. He seemed very sincere, very professional. He's like, Dmitry, I've been working on Hondas for 10 years. And let me tell you, this is the way to do it. You don't, like, for example, I remember someone did not recommend me to do transmission oil change, because if you change transmission oil, that's where transmissions will go on, like in Honda Odyssey years ago, and I trusted it. So that you have people who will recommend you something, and you have people who don't recommend. And it's not about saving money; it's about trusting them, right? It's knowledge, and you trust that person, and then you pay, and you will remember that, hey, I paid a little bit more for this for a reason. And this is what you're going to brag to your neighbors. This is what you're going to brag to your family. When people come over, it's like, hey, I did the roof and I paid premium dollar for it. They will remember that for the rest of their life over the brand. I mean, think about it. And meanwhile, so many contractors are going above and beyond to be the cheapest bidder. They think, especially startup guys, do you agree with this? And help me understand this mentality, John. You work with a lot of startups, I assume, when you do classes and stuff. Companies who are first year in business, second year in business. What I see is a common theme, so that new guys, especially who comes from installation world, like laborer, so like someone who were swinging hammer or working with a nail gun yesterday, today decides to open a company. One of the motivation that he has is because he thinks that the company he works for, or companies he works for, are ripping people off, and they're too much money, and he can save his homeowners, and this is exactly what he's gonna do. He's gonna go and he's gonna be, because he's seen maybe invoices, maybe he's heard people talk how much roof he's working on cost. He's like, well, how can it be that this roof is $15,000? I can do it for 10. And now they determined to save their customers money for, in business. So he opens business, and that's his value proposition. But that's not what people remember. They don't remember, as a matter of fact, Better Business Bureau says another data that 80% of complaints on BBB comes with the cheapest bidders. Like that's just, numbers don't lie. So 50% of people don't remember the brands that they paid for, and 80% of people want the cheaper bidders. Why? How to change that mentality of a startup to be the cheapest bidder, to save money, because they feel like big companies are evil, and which also means charging what they charge evil, and good guys should charge less. How do you change that?
Yeah, I think that, what's interesting is how many of the people listening, at one point were working for somebody else, and they just assume that the guy that I'm working for is driving home every day with a trunkload of $1,000 bills. Like, why aren't I doing this? And I think that as business owners, we have an obligation to ourselves and the industry and our employees to educate them on the cost of running a profitable business. I mean, Dmitry, you have some great videos out there that helps people understand the cost of doing business, how to determine pricing, all that kind of stuff. Like the financial stuff is very, very important. And I think that what tends to happen is they leave the business. They don't really have the acumen necessary to understand the financial aspects of how to run a profitable business, and they go out and they're trying to shoot from the hip. And I think that that's why we see a lot of the failures in our industry and a lot of the issues with the Better Business Bureaus. So I often suggest that and business owners will push back and they'll go, I don't want to teach them that stuff because they might go out and start their own business. And I would say, well, if they're the type of people that are going to go out and start their own business, they're going to do it whether you teach them or not. So don't you want to teach them the right way? So if they do go out, they're raising the standard rather than them going out and doing it the wrong way. And then you've got to compete with somebody that's lowering the standard. You don't have to give them your P&L. You can just use cost of doing business data to talk in percentages about how, the company makes money, how it loses money, how it keeps score. The reality is sales reps out there, they suffer from guilt. And that guilt is associated in part there's a lot of reasons for it. But one of the reasons is because they assume that they're overcharging the homeowner because I'm competing with my project price is $18,000 and the homeowner's looking at me and saying the other guy's going to do it for 10. Well, I don't know what's involved in that. All I know is I'm $8,000 difference. And I'm thinking that the guy in the office is screwing this person. And the reality is they don't understand that there are costs to delivering a great experience. There's costs to being able to stand behind their work. There's costs to the infrastructure. I mean, all the stuff. I don't need to lecture the audience on that. So I think that to answer your question, I would just say that we as business owners and managers need to educate our people so that they're in a better position to fight for what we deserve, as opposed to fighting the owner thinking that the owner's, making too much money. That's a problem. Definitely.
I think the biggest problem is many business owners have full-time jobs, and many people who had a job on a roof or in labor, when you have full-time job and you go in business, if you don't change mentality of having full-time job, running a business is not full-time job. Running a business is different mentality, different position. You have to think like a president, like CEO. And the biggest differentiator is understanding overhead. And when you are full-time employee, you don't have overhead. You don't have that factor built in your life. All you have, you do have cost of going to job, but you have hourly rate, or maybe maybe charging per square feet, right? But you don't have overhead built in your head. When you are a business owner, I'll share a story. My grandfather was a coal miner all his life in Russia, on south of Russia. He had some medals. They literally called him to Communist Party, like whatever, like biggest meetings, and they gave him for his productivity. There was like in USSR, like 3 people who achieved that. How much coal he drilled through the walls, like it was crazy. Like he was very productive, very tough build. When he retired, he moved to the village. Pretty much, he has really good pension, and he moved to very small village, bought a house, actually lived the dream life. I'm thinking about my grandfather. He passed away a couple of years ago. All the time now, he invested in wine. He was making wine. How do you say it? Vineyards. He was making wine.
Vineyard. He had a vineyard.
Vineyard.
Yep.
That's how you say it. Vineyards. So he has like 18 acres of grapes. It was amazing. Like he became a farmer, and he was teaching people in that village. So a lot of people in the village. I cannot hear you.
No, we're good.
Oh, so he came. So now you have this Russian guy who is retired, teaching local people in the village business essentially. So he was hiring like 15, 20 people to work in his vineyards. He was making like 5 tons of red wine, 2 tons of white wine per season. As a teenager, I was stealing that wine to have it with my friends. That's why, like, I love wine. But I remember he shared the story with me. He said, Dmitry, people were asking me, what is overhead? And I was like teenager, and in Russian, for those who is from Russia, understands Russian, it's called хозрасчет. So he's like, that's хозрасчет, that's overhead. So he would tell local people, it's like, do you see your warehouse, or do you see your backyard? Do you see that transmission lane there? That's overhead. Do you see that bucket? That's overhead. Pretty much everything you have in your business is overhead. That's how you explain it, right? And that's the difference between full time, employee and business owner. Business owner looks at the phone, looks at the bill, looks at every trip as overhead. I remember my first 2 years in the roofing business, I have Volkswagen Jetta, and I remember the mentality. Like, I remember how many people mocked me on it. I was the only contractor I knew who did not have a truck. I bought a truck later just to haul trailers, but I never drove it to single estimate. And because I did the math, my Volkswagen Jetta diesel engine was getting 45 miles per gallon. For every trip that that my competition would make on a truck, I would make 3 trips on a Jetta, and I would do 8, 9 gutter appointments per day. It was a lot of driving. My gas bill per week was like $50. And they were complaining that their gas bill is like $500 a week. Well, guess what? $450 a week in savings on the gas alone, that's a lot of money. That's overhead. And most people would not even be able to build it in their pricing and estimates and pass it to the homeowners. They don't, like on the price, if we're competing, we usually buy the same because there's market rate and you can't just go being the highest. Like, anyway, it just, most people do not understand what overhead is. Would you agree?
I think overhead had scares people because it's so there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but it's critically important. Years ago, and this is probably 25 years ago, I was working for a wholesale distributor, and we created a program called the Contractor Survival Program, and it was a 3-part program, and one was on sales, one was on marketing and leads. It was actually 4 parts. One was on pricing and profitability, and then 4th was on like planning and time management. We would actually give the group 3x5 cards, and we would pass out 3x5 cards, and I would put a picture of we sold Anderson windows. So I put an Anderson patio door on the screen, or on the overhead projector, I should say. And I would say, I want you to come out and bid this job. How many men do you send out on the job? Are you one of the men? What do you pay your men per hour? What do you pay yourself per hour? Because that's another problem, right? Guys don't pay themselves a salary. They just figure out whatever's left over in the end. I'm going to take some of that for me. You don't treat yourself as an employee in the business. I mean, that's a problem. But the interesting thing is we would say, how many hours do you think it's going to take to bid the job? What's your bid price? And then what we would do is we would take the highest price bid in the class and lowest price bid of the class. We'd make some very modest assumptions based on labor burden or overhead and things like that to determine which of the jobs made money or lost money. It was interesting because in one session, we had about 100 people in the room. And I said, I want to know what you pay your men per hour. And the guy goes, are you asking for my billable hour or are you asking for my payable hour? And the whole group goes, what's he talking about? I mean, and I was like, oh my gosh, like we literally had people in the audience that I pay my rep $18 an hour. I'm billing $18 an hour. These are employees in the organization, whether or not you have benefits or not, whether you give them medical or car allowance or anything like that, you're still paying a FICA tax. You're still paying workers' comp. You're still paying disability. Wow. There's a cost to that employee, and you're losing money every time you send that person out. And it was really shocking. I mean, this was 30 years ago, so I'm hoping that we're a little bit better today with the education that's out there. But yeah, man, you got some great videos. I would recommend that every contractor buy into your school. And if you as a business owner feel that you don't need it, get your reps to take advantage of it, because they'll be smarter salespeople as a result. They'll fight for your price better.
Love it. And yeah, we have over 400 videos in roofing school. It's roofing-school.com. And unfortunately, I cannot put stuff like that on YouTube or publicly because I don't want homeowners to see how much we pay, how much we charge. But honestly, you have to charge 3 times what you pay your employees. And it's business practice. If you go to any car dealership, like Honda, Toyota dealer, they charge you $75 billable. They based on how many hours it will take, whether it's oil change or transmission change, it's $75 or $200 for that mechanic, but he's making $20 to $25 because billable, like they pay $25, they charge $75 to $100. We have the same thing. If you're sending your reps, technicians to the job site. You pay them $25, you charge $100. And many people don't get it. I have two questions left for you for
Yeah.
today. Let's talk about price increases in the roofing industry. We
Mhm.
have tons. I think average, I might be wrong, maybe you correct me, but I think price went up on shingles and accessories about 35% last year. We had 6 to 8 increases depends on the distribution. Unfortunately, what I see happening is roofers they're not losing money, but they're not making as much, and it's very similar to trucking industry, to farming industry years ago. Like truckers make less than ever, and I see that roofers make less than ever for two reasons. Inflation is one, so everything is cost a little bit more. We pay more for phones, for trucks, for living, for food, and price increases, and we don't adapt fast enough. How often do you see roofing contractors increase their price? Can we adapt as fast as we getting the cost accurate? S- most contractors struggle to have 7 price increases. So you have to train your sales reps. And what I see very, very common in on my videos for the past 2 years, that homeowners complain more than ever. They would literally say like, hey, roofers are scammers. I paid for my roof 8 years ago $7,000, and today it's 20. Or 5 years ago it was 10,000, today's 15. So I see more and more comments like that in the hail markets, like your Texas, your Florida, hurricane markets. So homeowners are pushing back on our increases. Contractors cannot adapt fast enough. Give advice to the contractors, and what's your take on the entire price increases situation?
Yeah, I think first of all, contractors need to understand that their selling price is based on one thing and one thing only. It's based on numbers. And what the market wants to spend, what the customer that wants to spend, what the competition is charging. Like I always tell guys, look, your selling price is not about the market, the competition, the customer. Your selling price is a representation of all the costs that are incurred by your business to deliver the exact results that they want. You are a margin-based company, and I think that we need to focus on, if we're getting a price increase, we need to make sure that we're adjusting our pricing accordingly. And then literally, this goes back to the sales process. Am I following a process that creates a condition where the customer really wants to do business with me? I mean, Dmitry, look, you've had some videos on this. I know you've talked to some people about it, the importance of financing. I think that the single greatest opportunity for roofing contractors out there to move the sales and profit needles is to align with a powerful financing tool and to do it the right way. You are presenting your customer with an $18,000 roof, and whether they have the money in the bank or not, it's still shocking to them. I think that the more we can rely on that as in the form of a payment on every project, every proposal, every time, the greater our opportunity to reduce some of that sticker shock. I show a slide in some of the presentations that we do that show the 10-year trend from the Zonda, remodeling magazine cost value report. I mean, the cost of a 30 square roof, 5 years ago or 10 years ago was, I think, $17,000. And the price today is something like $33,000 for a 30 square walkable roof. Now, I want to be, fair. When Zonda's going out and they're doing surveys, they're not surveying many of the contractors on this podcast. They're surveying the top 25 remodelers in the country. They're surveying the Powers and the Home Fixes and the, those types of guys. And we have contractors out there that are selling, $1,100, $1,200, $1,400 a square for a single layer tear off, walkable roof. That's where those numbers come from. So I would encourage contractors to try, as they're raising their prices, to adopt a price conditioning component into their sales process that's really designed to anchor consumers to a more realistic price expectation. We've got a couple things that are, going against us, right? I remember, like, my father was one of those guys that would say, back when I was a kid, we could buy a roof for X. It's like, and I may even find myself saying that today about a bag of potato chips, for example. But reality is that I'm watching Property Brothers at night, and I see what these guys can do in 30 minutes with commercials with $20,000. They can completely flip the deck on a remodel. And now the roofer's going in and he's saying, I can do that roof for 17,000. And they're thinking 17,000. The Property Brothers guys did an entire house for 20. You've got that you got to deal with. You've also got what's happened in the past. I know somebody that had a roof replaced 5 years ago and it was significantly less. One of the things that I often recommend is to get your distributor, and we'll provide this for you, get a printout of every single price increase announcement that you've had over the course of the past year. Every product that you sell, get that, put it in a book and print it out. It's a Bible, right? And I'm going into the customer and I'm having this very transparent conversation. And I'm saying, hey, look, the stuff that we're seeing in the news, our inflationary economy, it's not limited to baby formula and gas and consumer goods. It's affecting every industry, including our own. Here's a list of the price increases that we have just last year alone, and they're expected to continue. If I have a price increase pending and let's say I'm a GAF contractor, I've got a copy of the GAF price increase. I'm highlighting the effective date and I'm highlighting the percentages, and I'm putting my price in front of the consumer and I'm saying, hey, look, I understand that you might not be ready to make a decision today, and that's fine, but I want you to know I can only honor this price until this particular date, because on this date, and I'm showing them the document, my price is going to go up 10%. So here's the deal. If you're ready to do this anytime between now and this particular date, I can honor the price. If you want to make a decision after that date, I can honor it. I'm going to have to add 10%, which is the price that's reflected in the announcement. And I can only honor that for 30 days because that's when we might get the next price increase. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to use reality to create a sense of urgency that compels them to want to act sooner than later. And I also want to build components into my CRM. And some of the CRMs we're using allow us to, the great thing about CRMs is they let us forget. They can remind us to do things. I can put a note in there that says, hey, this customer needs to make a decision by X date before the price goes up. And I'm now going to start using that as part of my rehash to follow up with them. You might get some sticker shock, right? The homeowner might say, you mean to tell me that in 2 weeks, this price is going to go up $2,000? Yes, ma'am. Do you know anyone that had their roof replaced last year? Because this roof would have been $4,500 less than it is right now. I just want to create urgency. And I'm not trying to scare anybody or cajole anybody to make a decision. I'm just saying, hey, here's the reality. We all know what's happening out there. It's happening to us too. I'm trying to put you in the best position. The truth of the matter is, and we're hoping this is going to temper at some point, but the best time to replace your roof is today. I mean, there's just no point where it's going to get cheaper. I actually have a document that I put on Facebook, which is called the Producer Price Index for Asphalt Shingles. And back in 2008, which is when I started in the roofing side of the industry, I think we had 11 or 12 price increases in 11 months. It was brutal. The cost of asphalt went from I think it was like $200 a barrel to $1,400 a barrel over a 6-month period. And everybody thought, as soon as gas prices drop, so are the costs of shingles. Well, if you look at that producer price index, you're going to see that the price from 2008 to 2019 stayed relatively flat. And then after COVID, when we started to experience the world that we're now living in, it escalated. And I'm not sure I'm not sure any of the prices that we're seeing out there today, even gas for a large part, is going to come down to the levels that we want them to come down to. I think we just have to wait for wages to kind of get caught up, and that might take a while.
So do you see our industry going more and more into financing like a car industry? Do you see that in a few years we'll finance way more roofs than we used to? Because what's your percentage? What do you think percentage right now is when people paying cash versus people financing the jobs? Is it 10% of deals get financing?
Yeah, I don't have a pulse on the exact percentages, but I can tell you that I think 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, there was a statistic on bankrates.com that said that 25%, or no, what was it? It was a very high percentage, and I don't want to misquote the quote here, but it was significant. I mean, it was the vast majority of projects of $2,500 or more were financed.
Really?
And I think that speaks to the other statistic that they shared, which was at the time, 69% of households had less than $1,000 in their savings account. I think 35% had nothing saved. So, and I would even like, just as a word to our storm restoration contractors who, if you're in a market where you're still blessed with a $2,500 deductible, right? We see those going away. But if you have customers that have a $2,500 deductible, according to bankrates.com, about 5% of them don't have the money to cover it. So by you asking them to write a check or put it on their credit card, I mean, you're literally using their emergency money on their credit card to fund something as simple as a $2,500 deductible. So I would suggest to even finance that, something that's a very low fee. I think that the challenge that I see is I lump our customers into kind of three different areas. It's the guys that feel like they don't need financing because everybody buys with cash, which is silly, because I tell people all the time, you have no idea where that money's coming from. And people are smart today, right? Like if I'm blessed to have $25,000 in my savings account to fund a roofing project, but my contractor comes to the home and he puts a price in front of me of $189 a month, and it's an unsecured loan with no prepayment penalties, and it's a reasonable fee, right? Like, why would I want to use my 25 grand when I can use your money for the next 5 years to pay for the project? And I can use my 25 grand to maybe make some more money if I have the means to do that. The other people are the people that want to use financing, but they can't figure out how to build financing into their infrastructure. You know, there's merchant fees and dealer fees, and how do I get reps that are going to deal with payment factors, and they're going to fudge things up at the kitchen table, and it's too complicated. So they go in and they offer a price, and then they let themselves. And then the other option is the people out there that are using financing. And I find that some of them are not doing it very well. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. I put the $18,000 price in front of them. The homeowner goes, wow, that's a lot. And they go, oh, I can finance it. I mean, like, that's not how you do it. At that point, it's too little, too late, right?
Got it. John, let's role play. Last question for today's podcast. I want to role play with you. You're going to be my sales coach. I'm going to be a startup roofing contractor who don't know nothing about restoration. Hey, John, I have a question for you. This homeowner says that they have insurance paperwork and they receive insurance check, but they ask me to give them a price. What do I tell them? Do I ask them to just give me the insurance paperwork because I don't want to come too low? What do I do with this job? Can they keep the money if my bid is too low? And what if I bid a little bit higher and they say that insurance is not paying that much? How do I win this job?
Yeah, I think the key in that situation, Dmitry, I would recommend that you, first of all, anytime a homeowner asks for something, I mean, assuming it's not illegal or immoral, I agree with them and I completely acquiesce. Hey, no problem. I'm happy to help you with that. Then what I do is I go into my rapport building. And I think that the key in that situation is, and this is a huge challenge, especially on the storm restoration side. And I know that you try to, communicate this in a lot of the stuff that you're doing, is we have an uphill battle as the contractor because the insurance companies are really doing such a good job of making themselves out to be these perfect angels, right? They're just wonderful. You've got, Jake from State Farm was giving gallons of ranch dip because people are so happy at the service that he gets. You've got the one guy who does the hall of claims that talks about just the crazy claims that they paid because they're just so generous and they want to take care of their client. We've got an uphill battle. So the insurance company is going to come to the house and they're going to say, hey, Dmitry, got everything taken care of. Let me write you a check. I got your estimate. Or to your point, I want you to go out and I want you to get, 3 bids. What I would recommend is that you just say, hey, no problem. I'm happy to help you with that. And then I'm going to go into my rapport building. I'm going to pet the dog. Let's take a walk around the house. Show me some of the reasons why you invited me out here. I'm going to try to get them to like me a little bit. Once they get to the point where they determine if they like me, I'm going to then use a system or recommend that the contractor get the homeowner to tell us that that the insurance company is looking for the cheapest estimate. So I might pull out a sheet of paper and I might say to the homeowner, hey, look, let's assume that your insurance company is telling you they want you to get 3 estimates. And they're going to say, yeah, that's right. And I'm going to say, do you know why that is? Now, you may luck out and the consumer might say, well, it's because they're looking for the cheapest bid. And if they say that, I could say, you know what? Unfortunately, in my experience, that's what typically happens. I mean, they're looking to keep their costs low, and they want to pay out as little money as humanly possible. And I'm then going to try to leverage my relationship with them to then say, and this is one of the reasons why so many homeowners are unhappy with the results of their insurance work or their insurance claim. What I would recommend that we do also is we make it very clear up front that regardless of who you choose, regardless of which of those estimates you choose, you're still on the hook for your deductible. And I'm going to be very sort of a matter of fact as I say that. And I'm going to say, hey, look, just so you're clear, right? It doesn't matter who you choose. You're still on the hook for your deductible. And I'm only telling you that because some people think if they go with the less expensive contractor, that means I don't have to pay my deductible, but it really doesn't work that way. And I might have my paperwork in front of me that shows the language that says that if the contractor's, estimate is less, we'll pay to that estimate minus your deductible. And they're going to go, oh, no, I get that. And then what I want to do is I want to let them know that what makes insurance a little bit different, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, is the fact that it's not the contractor that sets the price. It's really the insurance company. See, what I'm here to do today is I'm going to do an assessment of your roof, and I'm going to determine all the parts and all the pieces and the installation methods necessary to get your home back to pre-storm condition, making sure that it meets the manufacturer's warranty and it meets the code. I'm then going to take all those parts and all those pieces, and I'm going to price it, enter it into the software that the insurance company asks me to use. And the insurance company is going to tell me what they're going to pay for all those parts and pieces. So if you see a huge difference in price, if the other guy's $5,000 less than me, it doesn't mean, right, that he's doing the job for $5,000 less. It just means that he's entering less information into the computer. He may be repurposing damaged product. He may not be including product that's necessary to install your roof to code. And then with that information, I might say, well, do you have your insurance paperwork handy? Would you mind if we take a look at it? And now they may, and we hear this a lot, they might go, well, I don't want to show that to you. That's fine. They don't trust you. And I'm going to play that game. Hey, look, no problem. Obviously, I haven't earned your trust yet. So let's do this. You hold on to your paperwork, and I'm going to ask you some questions. And I'm going to ask them questions about their paperwork. What type of shingles are they using? What type of underlayment? Are they putting new, metal? Are they replacing the metal in the valley? Are they installing new drip edge, or are they reusing the old drip edge? Are they installing new flashing, or are they repurposing old flashing? What type of ventilation are they using? What type of underlayment are they using? The more the homeowner is unable to answer those questions, did they include starter shingles? We know the situation based on our market and based on the insurance company that are very likely not going to be included in that initial scope. I'm just going to exploit that in front of the homeowner. And I'm going to say, is this included? Is this included? Is this included? And they're going to say, I don't know. And I'm going to say, well, that's important, because if those items aren't used, you don't have a warranty from the shingle manufacturer. Right. And then I'm going to ask them, can you see why we don't really spend a lot of time focusing on estimates? We focus more on the scope of work to make sure that it includes everything that's necessary. Yes. And now I'm going to pave the way for me to have that conversation that says, hey, look, this is why it's important that you choose a reputable contractor. Here's the things that we're going to do for you. The key in that whole process, Dmitry, really is trying to build a relationship up front. Because a lot of guys in that scenario, the homeowner will say, well, the insurance company told me to get 3 estimates. And they'll go, well, why are you doing their work for them? Well, they're only going to go with the cheapest. The homeowner believes that the insurance company's got their back. They've got commercials. They're being beat over the head every day about how great the insurance company is. And us now being the contractor who's the least trusted business type that consumers do business with, according to the Better Business Bureau, year after year after year, now you've got me, the contractor, who everybody's being told, don't trust him, right? You've got me telling you, well, why are you doing their work for you? They're just trying to screw you. Who are they going to trust? So you got to take a step back and try to develop that relationship first. And I would do that first and foremost by saying, hey, no problem. I'm happy to help you with that. And then I go right back to my process. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Great answer.
Did I pass the role play?
Yes, you did. You did. You did. You gave great advice. Couldn't agree more. I still, if I were a contractor, still would like to learn Xactimate as soon as possible, because they playing with that language. They build that code, they build it. And as much as some hate Xactimate, I would argue that if that's the standard, learn the standard. If that's the software you use, I see so many contractors just not willing to do it. And people who are really winning in the game, they say, well, my estimate will be in the same software as theirs. It might be a little bit different because I'm going to be a little bit more detailed. So if their paperwork saying $22,000, mine can be $32,000, because on average, insurance companies increase 40% their claims from original estimates. So like, it's industry standard, it's statistics, we know the numbers. So on average, they are shorting you right now by 30-40%. So my estimate will be almost identical to yours with a few more line items. And the contractors who understand that, they're truly winning, because now when you tell a homeowner that something is missed, and you will give them estimate, but it will be higher, but it will not cost them more because insurance will cover it, or even if it costs more, you're not going to pass the cost to the homeowner. You pass the cost to insurance company. Homeowners usually love to hear that. So you're telling me that insurance not paying enough, but you're not going to charge me for more? Like, you're going to work with them, you're going to press them? Yes, it's exactly what we're going to do. And oftentimes they might even give you the paperwork. But I feel like startup companies who've never done work with insurance companies, they just don't have the report built. People are reading us. Like, everybody's reading body language. They see that and they'll take advantage of you. They'll see the moment you open your mouth about insurance claim that you don't know what you're talking about, that you're just trying to get, more for what you are already usually charged. That's the feel they're going to get. So they're going to feel like you're trying to take advantage of them. They feel like you're a $10,000 guy and I have $15,000 in my pocket and you're just trying to get it. But if you flip it on them and if you convince them that, hey, you have 15,000, but it should be 20 and I'm going to fight for extra 5. So now who's not trusting who? And who has the leverage. So it's all about leverage in the sale. And great answer, John. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure we're going to talk again, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.